How did you waste your 20s? Story 1. Staying in a relationship where I sacrificed my own dreams to help my partner through addiction. I thought they would change. They didn't. Now spending my 30s focusing on myself and pursuing my dream. I'm now giving myself the sacrifice I need to have the life I want. I'm shutting myself in my room, aggressively working towards my goals, and will not stop until I have achieved my goal. I'm going to the top. Hope it's not too late. My ex wasn't an addict, but I also spent too much time hoping he'd magically turn what I wanted him to be. A person who actually valued and paid attention to, plus my wants and needs. It took me 5.5 years to figure out that growing up sometimes means growing apart, that it's not always a bad thing. I understand that. My ex died when I was 27, and he was only 28. I just turned 30 earlier this year, so it's still a fresh wound. He was a heavy alcoholic 24/7, and I was there until the bitter end. I've had to work hard in therapy/AI Anon to help me cope in his death. No one realizes how draining it is to take care of a hardcore addict who can barely function. It is truly a soul-sucking experience. We love them and want them to be the best version of themselves, but if they can't help themselves, it is a waste of time for us to try. Story 2. I prioritized money over school. I thought that $10 per hour was so much. I also unfortunately stayed at this job until I turned 30 and it hit me. I didn't want to be there when I was 60 plus and I needed to do better with my life. I was making a bit more, but I was kind of in the same boat. It's hard to go from living comfortably to barely getting by while going to school so that you can be well off in the long run. Totally worth it though. I'm in your former position right now. 22 years old, didn't go to university or get a job, just started working to get out of my parents' place. I'll start going to an evening school next year to qualify myself for university. I know I can do better than first-level IT support, even though I'm happy with what I'm doing right now. It's crazy how different amounts of money can seem small or huge to different people at the same time. I remember getting an intern in college and the president of the company personally apologized for only paying me $10 per hour instead of the typical $15 for that type of job at the time. But I also knew an LPN, licensed nurse practitioner, who would have given anything at the time to be making $10 an hour. Young people can really get tempted to earn money instead of wasting thousands at university. Story 3. Too much drinking. Didn't take uni, personal development, work, family, anything seriously. I grew up in my late 20s, but often think about what I might have achieved by now if I wasn't a drunk mess from ages 18 to 28. Basically this. Prioritized partying, girls, trying to be cool, trying to be friends with everyone, even pieces of crap, and earning money. Forgot about my health, my sanity, and my real relationships. Stopped all that some years ago. Have a kid now. I'm content spending the next 10 to 20 years on my child, my health, and my real relationship. I'm in my mid-20s and I feel like none of my friends were on the same page, so I lost a lot. I have 2 friends now, and I only talk to them every couple of months/hang out a few times a year. I often wonder if I made the wrong choice, or if there's something off about me because I no longer enjoy going out and drinking. Literally my feelings. Partied too much in college, partied too much until 28. Found out my mom had cancer, so I drank more until I was 31, when she died and I started to grow up. Also, due to the 2008 recession, I didn't get a chance to realize my work potential. Too many times I have been let go from contract work. Now I'm finally getting my CPA and have a life goal. Rarely drink and have a wonderful little boy and husband. I think all the time how much I would have now if I had been this way in my 20s. Story 4. I honestly thought I had wasted my 20s, but I've come to realize I've been fighting through a difficult set of circumstances. When I was 20, my ex-GF's grandpa was murdered, which seemed to set off a whole series of negative events. A few weeks later, her stepdad died, and my sister had a failed suicide attempt in the same 12-hour period. And then my sister slipped into drug addiction for about 8 years. I ended up being single for a long time, just helping run my dad's company until COVID. When COVID hit, I decided to go back to school. During this period, my dad suddenly passed away from cancer, which really broke me down to my core. It feels like the past 8 years have been a blur, and it's hard to see how I've progressed, besides nearly finishing my degree. I haven't had a girlfriend in 4 years. I'm basically broke, and my nuclear family is in disarray. It all feels like a mess. I'm working through therapy as it seems I've developed MDD. I just really hope my 30s bring some peace for myself and others who are pondering what must have been a turbulent few years. I'm 49. In my 20s, I experienced parents divorcing, the death of my grandmother, the death of my mother, tragic car accident, the death of 2 of my childhood dogs, my father remarried and had a new child, gutted me, and I experienced alcoholism, severe panic, and anxiety. I can 110% tell you life does get better. I'm now happily married for 22 years, have 2 great children, a fantastic government career, my wife has a great job too, own a house, and live a modest life. Anxiety and panic have gone on for decades, and I haven't drunk for 5 years now. I don't regret my 20s. It cemented my foundation and made me a stronger person, but at the time, it felt very broken. You've got this. You're so young. I am 27. For much of my life, it was just my mom and me. Everyone else was either mentally ill or abusing some sort of drug. It was extremely hard for me to live a normal life. I'm a minority and a woman, so I get judged for so much, and I am expected to know my place and agree with things I don't agree with, or else people just hate me for no reason and treat me like a crazy person. I just want to be the love I need. People have made a destructive and evil place, and my goal is to just fix all of it, hoping and dreaming me alive, and I am finding a purpose, and it has nothing to do with God. I just believe in myself and I'm never giving up again. Story 5. Smoking too much weed. I spent a year of my 20s smoking maybe 1 to 3 times a week as a way to get over a bad breakup. I know to some that may not sound like a lot, but it had a serious effect on my mental health. I used it as an escape when I was feeling down, but it was really just putting off my feelings and making things worse. My brain was constantly foggy to the point where I was struggling at work. Pretty brain-intensive job as an engineer. My ambition plummeted. My internal reward system was broken. I was working out about half as often as I typically would. I didn't see the purpose of taking risks, developing new skills, hanging out with friends, meeting new people, etc., because I would just get my dopamine rush from smoking. It was genuinely a scary time in my life. Luckily, I recognized what was happening and one day just decided to throw all of my smoking supplies away. It took a little bit of time, but eventually my brain cleared up and I started finding joy in other aspects of my life that I had been missing. That was the biggest part of smoking for me. It just took away the fun and meaning from everything if I wasn't high. Now I will only smoke on rare occasions, maybe a few times a year. It's very enjoyable that way and I have no urge to go back to regular use. I think this is big for a lot of people. In a way, I was lucky that weed started affecting me very negatively. I started smoking at 16 and would laugh a lot, have fun, and goof off with friends. It was a weekend thing mainly, but for some friends, it began to be a daily habit as the years went by. It was really hard for me to stop when it started hitting me badly in my early 20s. I would feel like quitting, but when I was around it, I couldn't say no. I know the word addicted is often criticized in the context of weed, but I couldn't think of any other word to describe my behavior. Since I mainly did it with other people, I just threw away my vape and honestly isolated myself until I felt I built the willpower and conviction to say no. I, of course, slipped up a few times and regretted it, but as time went on, it became easier. All this to say that if anyone is reading, I can sympathize with. I guess I just wanted to comment because this hit home. All long-term studies of THC I've been able to find do not show anything good at all, which was originally a revelation to me, as the meme while I was in high school was that it was actually good for you. Turns out that's just CBD, not THC. This info helped me develop the conviction to stop, but I also worry about friends now because of that info. I don't think I can be convinced that dabbing every day is good for anyone. Anyone who thinks weed isn't addictive is deluded. Anything that makes you feel good can be addictive. Just look at sugar. Story 6. May get downvoted, but having kids. I should have waited, should have started a career. Instead, I'm stuck as a stay-at-home mom because we can't afford it. Childcare? Don't get me wrong, I love my kids more than life itself, but I should have waited. I'm in my 40s, and a lot of my friends regret having kids in their 20s. It's heartbreaking. It's not that they don't love their kids, it's just that their entire adulthood was lost to caring for their children, and if many had waited, they wouldn't have had kids at all. A lot of people jump into it in their 20s without thinking about it. To be honest, you might have actually won here. You don't have to work 40 or more hours weekly on a job you don't like. You get to raise your children and not spend most of your income on childcare. The only way it's an L is if you know for 100% certainty that you would have been making serious money, like over 6 figures. There's way more to it than salary. Being a stay-at-home parent often puts women behind career-wise, and it's very hard to overcome, especially if you don't have a degree. There are also 10+ years of not contributing contributing to retirement and Social Security, which has a massive impact when you're older. And you're at a huge disadvantage if your working spouse leaves you. Being a stay-at-home parent comes with huge risks and long-term setbacks. Yep, I stayed at home for 4 years, got back to work by going to grad school and publishing something that made me professionally relevant again. 10 years out, I've made up the lost career progress, but I'm still working on the retirement deficit. It's had a big influence on my career choices. The kids I stayed home with for most of their lives are not better off than the ones who went to daycare from a young age. If I could go back and do it again, I would not have stayed home. Story 7. Wasted on medical school, to the point I started doing all kinds of bad habits, smoking, drinking, etc. I failed many exams that I gave up around the 4th year. Another year of psychological treatments. Now I'm 30, second honorary Bachelor of Accounting graduate, waiting for a job opportunity. As someone who also dropped out of medical school in my final year but slowly turned things around, there is light on the other side of that tunnel. The biggest thing is that you didn't let what happened to you stop you from finding another path forward. Don't let student debt, anxiety stop you from living life. Depending on your financial situation, it may take a long time to pay off. Keep moving forward. I'm rooting for you. This was me, except it was pharmacy school, a doctorate program to become a pharmacist, and I quit after 2 years. It was a 4-year program. It was pressure from my parents that landed me there in the first place. It was never what I wanted to do. I hated every second of it. I just kept telling myself that the amount of money I would eventually be making would magically make it all okay. But no, that's not a life worth living. It's not all about the money, so I quit. Now I'm a zookeeper doing what I love, working with amazing exotic animals every day. Life is so much better now. Story 8. I'm 22 now. I went to a prestigious university in my own country when I was 17. The major was the Japanese language, and it was pretty good to work in the translation sphere where I'm from. I was just a normal student who had gotten an opportunity to study in Japan and would make my career there. But in the case of war, I had to cancel my plans. My parents had lost their jobs, and I decided to make my own money. After months of working as a bartender, I tried amphetamine and became a junkie, all last year on a crappy trip. It was May 2023 when I quit drugs and started a whole new life with no will to live. My family and friends refused me when I had severe depression. After all I've been through, I decided to risk it and start over. Now I am enrolled in a Chinese university. I'm looking forward to going there in February, and I'm really excited about it. It's crazy how many geniuses end up becoming addicts. I've seen it happen to too many people. Story 9. Never quite figured out what I wanted to do with my life, and was hyper-obsessed with hitting normal milestones like getting a 6-figures job, finding a significant other, and gritting my teeth to pursue an industry I felt zero passion for since it was the supposedly safe choice, and staying in a city I hated because I felt too ashamed to start over after investing so much time. I realized after 600+ job applications that I hated what I was doing. The school I attended to develop skills was a diploma mill, and I was 28. Feeling miserable, unfulfilled, and overweight, I snapped. A year later, I'm now starting my career as a professional voice actor with my first demo in its final stages of production. I've dropped 30 pounds and am no longer pre-diabetic. I've managed to save up to 5 figures for the first time, and I'm moving to Tokyo next month to pursue language school and hopefully settle in Japan for a while. My 20s sucked. My 30s are going to kick ass. Sounds like he spent his 20s finding himself, and is going to spend his 30s creating himself. Nothing wrong with that. Story 10. I always thought I was already too old. I'm 25. I'm too old. I remember saying I'm old when I was 23. Now I'm in my 30s and I cringe thinking what an idiot I was. However, now I realize I'll be saying the same crap about my 30s and my 40s, so it gives me perspective to enjoy myself now. Many people here on Reddit would incur that 30s is still too young. Today is the youngest you'll ever be again, so enjoy it. I hate this feeling. I am 28 and the approaching 30s are making me feel itchy. I feel like a battered, bigger version of my teenage self with not a lot more wisdom, just a whole lot more responsibility. To see 30 looming ahead and thinking, well, I'm not really all that young anymore, is freaking me out. That I'm not in the freshest, just minted adult generation anymore. 10 years ago, I was 18, but it feels like 3 years ago. 10 years ahead is almost 40. Will that feel like 3 years too? I feel like the social media era has just started making everyone feel old. Youth doesn't last long anymore. Story 11. Thing about your 20s is, no matter how you spend it, you'll wonder about the other path. Party, get wasted, spend everything you earn traveling the world, and you'll wish you'd been more studious and built better foundations. Study hard, work diligently, and build good foundations. You'll wish you'd partied and had more fun as others did. I was feeling pretty depressed about my 20s until I read this post. I realized that no matter which path people choose, they're wondering about the other path. I've done 8 years of university, and so that's a good portion of my 20s. I wanted to travel all over the world and have a different life. Then I see so many posts here of people saying they regret that too. As someone who took this path and is now 52 looking back, I have zero regrets. Many of the friends I worked with in my 20s are now VPs at major companies, like 8 friends. I had the same drive back then, and I'm fairly confident I could be in a similar position today had I stayed the course. But I love my life. Those memories from my party/travel time are amazing. My friends who took the other path seem mostly unfulfilled. They have a lot of success, but with, how do I describe it, a certain type of lack of joy that can't be with money. I'm not as well off, but I feel fulfilled. A lot of that comes from those experiences and the feeling that I lived my life in a way that I wanted to during those years, not in a way that society wanted me to. But that's me. I think had some of my friends chosen my path, they wouldn't feel the same way. For those of us who hear the loud call of you need to travel the world and take it, it's not something we regret, but rather it ends up defining our identities and our priorities later in life in a positive way. Story 12. I did a PhD. The first time I made more than $30K in a year, I was 31 years old. Screw academia. I can't disagree with you. My 2 master's degrees have been pretty much worthless except they gave me something to do during my 20s, which were years 3 through 13 of my 20 years in prison. So now I'm qualified to teach literature, but I don't think even a community college would hire me. The upside is that I found my wife while I was locked up, and we've been married for 28 years. Academia is a huge pyramid scheme. Not to say that other jobs are not, but I think academia is steeper than most, while not looking like one from the outside. Basically, you have grad students and especially postdocs doing everything, and professors taking all the credit. As a young or independent researcher, you can't get any funding unless you have enough papers published in high-index magazines. You can't publish anything published without an established professor's name on your paper. So you basically work through all your 20s and 30s so that other people get funding, but you still do it because you hope that one day you will be the professor who does nothing but travel around promoting your students' work. Again, that's not so different from how promotions work at other jobs, but it's much better hidden. It's common knowledge that managers do not do anything, but most people think that senior researchers are more like senior engineers, while they are essentially managers. In my case, I got my PhD, which wasn't so bad because I was paid to do it, but then left immediately. Story 13. I'm 28 and I've done nothing. No trips, haven't seen any music live, never go out. All I do is work and sleep. Like today, for example, all I did was work and now I'm going to sleep as soon as I can and do the same thing tomorrow. Honestly, I hate life. I've had a total of 6 days of vacation since I turned 20. I got a zoo pass 2 years ago and that's the highlight of my 20s so far. I'm in the same place in life. Feels like nothing is happening in my life. Just work, eat, and sleep. One thing I changed this year is that I've taken to traveling. I will take a vacation this October. Won't just be my second this year, but my second in life. I've realized that the only way to make life better is to want it more than anything else. I'm 36 and I just want to say, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. If you really wanted to, drive across the country in a van or something, what do you think you're really going to get out of it? An empty wallet and loneliness on the road is what you would get. Live music got destroyed during COVID, so that wasn't really your fault for the last 3 years. And I don't know if you went to college, but that's definitely something if you did. I'm not disagreeing, but commenting because I had such a vastly different experience. I did live music with all my friends in my early 20s and got very little enjoyment out of it beyond the time I spent with the people I love. Took a big road trip and found out I enjoyed the solace of the outdoors in rural America much more than a loud and bright time in the city. Moved and found tremendous success and fulfillment in it. You're right. It cost me every penny I had, but I went home, saved a few more bucks, and came back a year later. Just thought the contrast was interesting, reading someone use what is essentially your story as a reason not to go that way. I agree with your original sentiment that OP is doing what they're supposed to be doing at this point though, albeit a bit extreme. My 20s were filled with grinding my own dick off to make a life. Hope they stick their neck out and pursue something that makes them happy. Known too many folks who just thought running a dead-end job till their significant other left them would make a difference. We're young. I'm younger than you, but still. Now is the time to take risks and hope for rewards, lest we wind up old and doing the same crap. We have time to recover from lost bets. My best friend, who moved to my location the same day I did, when we started a new job, where it all began for us with another old friend doing the same thing we started doing, put it best. If we were still with the same people doing the same crap for the same money, I'd be upset, but now we're making triple the money doing better crap with the same old people. So what's there to be upset about? Story 14. Multiple disabilities. Most of them went away when I found out at age 32 that I was iron deficient. What were some of your symptoms? I feel like I'm constantly being told that I'm depressed when I'm not sad. I'm just lethargic and in pain. Sometimes I think it's more medical than it is psychological. The one that alerted me to the correct diagnosis was that my toenail split in an unusual way. The big symptom was a massive fatigue. It had been misdiagnosed as idiopathic hypersomnia, and we were treating it with 60 milligrams of Adderall, a huge dose, which cut the amount of sleep I needed from 14 hours to 9. I was having severe side effects, including erectile dysfunction and occasional seizures. My headaches reduced in intensity and frequency, my bipolar episodes stopped, still taking hardcore psych meds, but I now have 100% coverage for bipolar, which I did not have before, and I had a significant cognitive boost. Story 15. Not quite out of my 20s yet, but I decided it would be better to get experience with real people doing real jobs than go to college. Realized I am in no way above a hard day's work or menial labor, but I am effing bad at it. Now I realize how dumb I was, and college wasn't just something to do, it was my way out of being unskilled, replaceable meat until I was old and broken. This is the flip side of all the people who didn't go to college and then boast about how college is worthless. A useful degree and an intelligent plan for funding it, state/community schools, scholarships, can open the gates to wealth that non-grads won't ever see. The only wealthy people I've met without a degree are business owners. You won't take home $250K a year in a trade or as a laborer unless it's in a really austere environment, and that's still pushing it, which is a whole different category of hard work. Bingo. A couple of years ago, my dad told me a story I didn't remember at all. He was a mechanic who was always wrenching on cars in the garage for extra cash. He would always get me to try to come out there and watch him to learn, but I never wanted to. When I was about 13, he got all pissed off at me and started yelling at me, asking what in the hell I was gonna do when my car broke down when I was older. My response was, after I got done with college, I'm gonna pay someone like you to fix it. I'm not going to be 45 years old crawling under a car. He said that was the moment he knew that I would be okay. Funny thing is, now I love to wrench on cars for fun, but I certainly never wanted to do it when it was work. My cousin's daughter is finding this out the hard way. She passed up going to trade school, including the business part of it, for landscaping, so she could pursue a physical labor job for a landscaping company. Eventually, after 2 jobs in that field that didn't live up to their promises, she fell back to farm work. Sadly, however, she recently found out that due to her shoulders and arms scar tissue, her blood vessels gave out, and when she raised her arms above shoulder height, she lost a pulse in her arm. Her doctor basically told her she couldn't do any physical labor job again, otherwise she could cause further damage, especially to her other arm. She's only 22. She was crushed and was tearing up when she told me. Now she has no trade, not even the business end of it. All of her jobs up until now have been physical. Story 16. Didn't really have a game plan for making a living and waited too long to figure one out. Also, was too caught up in my feelings to act on a lot of good dating options I didn't realize I had, which would have been fun. Things worked out great anyways, but still. I would say it's more important to figure out what kind of life or lifestyle you want to live as opposed to what you want to do for a living. What you want in the former should help guide and inform what you do in the latter, but you have to be really honest with yourself in doing so. Like for me, I grew up fairly poor before, and what I realized in my late 20s, unfortunately, was that I didn't want to live like that more, and that living a certain lifestyle was important. Nothing crazy, but I wanted to be able to do certain things without constantly worrying about whether I could afford them. Stuff like going out to nice dinners with my wife when we want to, going on vacation and doing so comfortably as opposed to always taking the cheapest option, and buying whatever I want when I want it, within reason. Once I figured that out, I knew that I needed to make a certain income to achieve that, so I started exploring careers that would get me there, focusing on ones that catered to my strengths and interests. For me, that ultimately led me to becoming an attorney, and it worked out, but it took me longer to get there than I would have liked. My point is that once you figure out what does and doesn't matter to you, that will allow you to make informed and intentional decisions in what you do for a living. Story 17. Being scared of people and letting people take advantage of me. People would borrow what little money I had with and without permission and never pay me back. Your first line hits deep. I had undiagnosed, unmedicated anxiety so bad that I couldn't leave my room if anyone else was home. I'd stand behind the closed door, listening for people to leave the room on the other side so that I could sneak out around the corner and use the bathroom. Then do the same thing in there to get back out. And the guy I was living with, a different sort of advantage was taken of me, leaving me wholly dependent on him for far too long. I don't know your story, but I truly hope you're doing better now too. I would do the same thing, hide behind the door and wait for everyone to leave. The fear extended to the family. I tried my best not to do that so much, after my two little nieces thought that I didn't want to be around them. So I would come out a little more, just so they didn't feel like I was avoiding them. I'm sorry about your situation. I hope that everything is going well for now. I'm on medication and I feel quite a bit better. Still have some of the bad days, but I'm trying. I've definitely been there, standing by my door, listening for footsteps and praying that I don't run into anyone in the hallway. Story 18. Being too shy. To anyone younger reading this, take risks. Ask that person out. Go to the local event that you've been eyeing. Strike up a conversation with a cool-looking stranger. Get up on stage at karaoke night. Volunteer. Join a club. Life is not a movie, and there is no magical special person that will notice you and come pull you into the light. You have to do that yourself. I'm 29 and I have trouble with this still. As a single guy who lives alone, in the past year, there have been a couple of concert/stand-up shows that I missed because I didn't have anyone to go with and I felt uncomfortable going alone. I have a decent amount of friends, but don't all live a super convenient distance, and literally all of them are in relationships, so it can be hard. As much as your powerful statement is probably true, as a man being shy or socially awkward or just having social anxiety, which I have, is the worst damn thing to have in life as a personality disorder. Social anxiety kept me from seeing the world, asking beautiful and fun women out, and engaging in conversations with intelligent people. I always felt that I was being judged and people always are disrespecting me low-key, but sometimes it's all me assuming things. But as you said, we have to pull ourselves into the light. It's just that for me. With social anxiety, it has always been darkness, no matter how bright the sun shone through. Yeah, it's just physically difficult sometimes to take the first step. Story 19. By getting fat and then getting so depressed by that, I effectively cut myself out of everyone's lives because I was too embarrassed to be seen by old flames, friends, or people who knew me a certain way. I do not recommend it. I lived like that for over a decade. Didn't find the motivation and conviction to change things until I was 35. I got the weight off, but the long-term effects on my body and mental health, those will always be a work in progress. I'm happy now and I'm grateful for that. I also do not recommend it. Edit. I know it's been a while since my comment, but if anyone's still reading it, and you're living this now, and you want to get out, feel free to send me a private message. I will tell you what I did, what worked, and what didn't. I wish everyone could make the changes I've made, not trying to sell anything, just genuinely offering to share my story and can offer some inspiration for somebody. You can change your life. It's hard, but it's entirely worth it. I'm in the same boat at 24. After 4 years of drinking, eating, staying in my room most days, I'd get sad about how much weight I'd gained, and so I would stay in my room out of shame. Then one day I looked in the mirror and saw a monster, no longer the skinny, active, go-lucky 19-year-old I used to be. I was just a slob. So I hatched a plan last year to move countries. Basically told my family I was removing myself from the situation and would be a total Hail Mary. It's working out pretty well so far. I've lost a bit of weight, but still a ways to go. A fresh start is what I needed. Just a place to start all over again. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you'd like to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.